Hello, welcome to Engineering Cultures. This is Josiah Eichelman. Today we'll be talking about three countries, Great Britain, France, and Germany. Let's first clarify what we mean by dominant image. It's customs and ideas that become popular and shape the fundamentals of that society. This typically takes the form of education systems, political institutions, and cultural values. Now that we have an understanding of dominant images, let's jump into Great Britain. Great Britain, engineering education has evolved over the years. Traditionally, it valued apprenticeship method. Typically, this is referred to as critical schools. Unfortunately, Great Britain quickly fell behind other countries. The apprenticeship method failed to establish a broad understanding of engineering principles, which engineers needed in the industrial age. That's when the Finston Report came out in the 1970s. It called for better engineering education in Great Britain with improved standards for engineers. It was a much more broader and theoretical approach as compared to the apprenticeship model which had been used before. Now let's hop over to France with Henry IV, who appointed the Ingénieurs de Ponce for the first engineers. Ingénieurs de Ponce were also known as state engineers. They were typically in charge of building communication routes, which consisted of bridges and roads. Usually this is thought of civil engineers in today's day. The French had a variety of educational systems primarily divided upon the class of people who went to each. The first was the École de Polytechnique, or the upper echelon class. Second of all was the École Centrale de Manufactures. This was more industrial focused and on the merchant class. And last was the Écoles Arts de Métiers, which was the least prestigious of them three. Now let's hop on over to Germany. World War I and World War II had a significant impact on Germany's engineering culture. Prior to the war, engineering and politics were two separate entities. But as the war continued, they began to blend together. Because as you know, tanks and planes and crematoriums all need engineers to be built. An example of this comes from the readings. A man named Herman Lambert was a German engineer involved with building crematoriums. As the reading goes, he was completely aware of what he was building and the damage it was causing, but he was still performing it because he thought he was a cog in the war machine. Let's circle back around. The word engineer has two meanings in German: Techniker, or a technician regarded as the lower class, or it could be the level of education typically very high. This gives you an indication how engineering was viewed as very low class until VDI came along and gave prestige. Now let's recap. We talked about Great Britain and how the apprenticeship shaped its culture. We talked about France and the different écoles and the different classes that attended each. And finally, we talked about Germany and the heavy influence from the world wars. So why are these dominant images important? Well, let me direct you to the readings. The merger between Mercedes and Daimler was a catastrophe due to the differences in their dominant images. Mercedes had a creative, agile approach, while Daimler, a German company, was more disciplined and had proven methods. Understanding these would have been much better. Thank you for watching my study guide on engineering cultures. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Thanks so much. Bye.